Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how we just learned even more about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So many of you may be aware that on March 27th, last week, just a few days ago, we got a new Nintendo Direct about Switch 1 games, and we got a new trailer for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond there. It was the second trailer, and I already put together my initial analysis for that trailer where there was a lot that we learned. But since then, more has been discovered. We have noticed more things in the trailer, but also we've gotten the official box art for the game, and with it a piece of concept art that I think actually might be revealing some incredibly important details about the game that I think everyone has been overlooking. But also, from the Japanese website for Metroid Prime 4, we have some different translations that give us a little bit more context on what's going on with the game. And on top of all of that, there appear to be some rumors or discussions going on when it has to do with Metroid Primes 2 and 3, and there's certainly implications in terms of how Nintendo's handling Prime 4, perhaps surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. So we have a lot to get into today. This is perhaps my second video for the day, but I'm not sure when else I'll have a chance to talk about all this stuff, so here we are doing another deep dive into things going on with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit that notification bell. So as I already said, I've already done my initial analysis for the second trailer of Prime 4. However, an uncompressed trailer has gone out there. I will put a link in the description below so we can get a much better look of this trailer with this uncompressed version. And the game looks absolutely beautiful. I understand a lot of people feel underwhelmed from what we've seen so far of Prime 4, but the more and more I look at this trailer, the more and more beautiful I realize this game is, especially when looking at the uncompressed version. There's so much detail there are so many beautiful particles in the air, there's a great sense of atmosphere and depth. Really is something we don't see in any Nintendo game, and I'll even go as far as saying that Prime 4 is doing a much better job of it than even Prime Remastered, a game we've already argued is the best looking game on Switch 1. But with that all said, there have been some things noticed from the trailer that we did not realize initially. So for starters, and shoutouts to Captain Doge1 on Twitter who pointed this out, and I saw it so I am talking about it now, but it looks like we do indeed have some evidence that there are going to be beacons or markers we can place on the map in Prime 4. Now, this is something we saw a little bit of in Metroid Dread, and we've seen it in other Nintendo games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, for example. But with the Metroid Prime games, the maps have always been fairly sophisticated, and adding a marker system will certainly make for a bigger difference. It's a more of a modern thing that we see nowadays. So it looks like, at least in that respect, Metroid Prime 4 is also being modernized. But another cool thing that's been noticed from Prime 4 that is a modernization or a change of the gameplay is that we see Samus fighting this plant in Vuros, and we notice that she actually does a jump backwards. And at first glance, you might think there's not really much to this, but this is actually a very big deal. You see, in prior Prime games, Samus had the ability to dash to the left or to the right, but not backwards or forwards. Reminder, this is a first-person adventure shooter game, right? This isn't like a Zelda game or any other sort of typical third-person action-adventure where you can do backflips and such. This is a first-person game, and so we see here Samus is actually doing a dash backwards as well, and so that alone is going to make for a big difference with the gameplay. If you're about to see yourself getting hit, you can jump backwards, not just strafing left and right to get around. So I'm actually very excited about this mechanic change here, but this could have even bigger implications. An issue with the Prime games back in the day was that Samus did feel very tanky, even though Samus, canonically, is a very fast, agile character. And with modern first-person shooters, there's been a lot of things that are now done that help these games to feel a lot quicker, more fluid, and so the hope has been that with Metroid Prime 4, it being a modern first-person shooter adventure, they find ways to portray Samus as the more agile character she truly is, by using some of the modern innovations we see in other first-person shooters, and seeing this dash backwards is a part of that. Now, can there be more? Will they implement a melee attack system, for example? That could help Samus to continue to push forward even when there's hordes of enemies. There are some other things that can be done here, and it looks like Nintendo is still being very cautious about telling us everything there is to know about Prime 4, because we're seeing some subtle signs of some pretty big changes, but they aren't blatantly shown off in the trailer. They're very subtle things that you wouldn't notice upon first glance, or even second glance for that matter. But something else I would like to speak on here when it comes to trailer analysis. I had talked about, with my initial analysis for trailer 2, that it looks like Samus's new psychic abilities tie into her scan visor as well, and I saw a few comments suggesting otherwise, trying to counter it, because Samus has always scanned things and has had her hand towards her face in prior games. We're just seeing a better depiction of it now. However, the reason why I feel confident that the psychic abilities are actually tied to her scanning, at least in Vuros, is because we do see the purple waves or rounded lines on the sides of her visor when she's scanning. The only other times we see these purple lines is when they are portraying Samus's new psychic abilities. For comparison, look at the first trailer when Samus is scanning. There are no signs of the purple lines. There is a change that Samus undergoes at the end of this initial section of the game before she goes to Vuros, and once that happens, even when scanning, it looks like a little bit of those purple psychic abilities are representing themselves. Now, is this a big deal? It might be kind of a same different sort of situation, because either way, she's scanning things and we're getting the same kind of information, but it's just an interesting thing to consider from a lore perspective, I suppose. But now let's move on to the website. So on the Japanese website, they actually have some really good background music, a lot of the music we heard from the first trailer. I have it playing now in the background, and it's beautiful. I've been using it in a few different videos already. I love the music in Metroid Prime 4. If there was ever any concern with the compositions in Prime 4 compared to the prior Prime games, after hearing this, I think those concerns should be totally alleviated, because I would argue the music we've heard from these trailers is perhaps better than what we've heard in prior Prime games, and it's at least on par. Now, as we see from the website, there is a very interesting piece of concept art here which is being used for the box art, and we will speak more on this in a moment, but first I want to just look at the different things that we see in the website itself, and it's in Japanese, right, but I have gone translations here. So for this first one, it's about Samus. It just says Samus Aran, one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy who will accomplish any difficult request. Next, we have Vuros. Vuros, an unknown planet where Samus was suddenly transferred. Dark green jungles centered on huge trees spread out. Next, we have Survive. Scan stone statues and ruins to explore the way to go. Also, fight back against strange creatures that nest in the jungle. Here we have Psychic Abilities, the mysterious power obtained by Samus in the search. Manipulate abilities and open up difficult paths. Moving on, we have now the Lemorn, these ancient people we see here. So it says, the space people that once existed in Buros tell Samus a wish. Now, Buros is just a weird translation thing, they mean Vuros. And finally, we have Silex, an unidentified bounty hunter who has a strong grudge against the Galactic Federation and Samus. So it's important that they are pointing this out here on the website. So this is an unidentified hunter. Like, yes, we know that it's Silex, but we do not know who Silex is. We do not know who the man behind the mask is. And it's also being pointed out that this person has a grudge against both Samus and the Federation. And he's working with the space pirates, he's got Metroids, so he's clearly causing some serious issues here. But moving on from the website translations, let's now talk about this new concept art we see for Prime 4, which is also being used for the box art. I think there's actually some pretty big things to take away here. So first, looking at these Lemorn statues, something that I just found worthy of note is that they aren't all the same. We have these two here, right? But the one in the middle actually has a different pattern of clothing, and the gem in the middle of its head has a different sort of design than the other two. The other two is just sort of like a rounded sort of orb with a shine. This one almost has like some sort of pointed design. And I think this is actually really interesting when we consider that Samus also has some sort of gem on her head as well. And so these Lemurian creatures clearly have some sort of psychic abilities, right? I feel like that's a pretty fair assumption. In the trailer, we see them apparently giving Samus these psychic abilities, so I think there's definitely something going on there. But we also notice that we have these like sentinels or guardians that look very mechanical, robotic, and I'm pretty sure at some point or another Samus is going to have to fight these guys. If not because they've gone evil, as some form of a test. This is very typical Metroid Prime. We've seen the Chozos test Samus before. It could be something very similar here where the Lemurian are testing Samus as well. She is the chosen one, they want to give her powers and such, but she may have to prove herself and show that she's ready. But that's just the simple stuff. I think what's really interesting is what we see on the bottom side of this concept art here, or art. And that's because we see a wide spread desert with some pretty interesting points of interest. We see a flag here in this structure. It almost looks like some sort of Federation building. I think there's a very good chance of that. However, over here on the other side, we see a completely different kind of structure where the sun is shining upon it. It's some sort of giant monolith with something else hovering above it, so it's very different style. It may point towards a Lemurian or another ancient advanced race. There is that very interesting environment. We see Samus evolving her suit at the end of the second trailer. Perhaps it's related, perhaps it's another entirely different super advanced race that's helping her to evolve her suit. There's a lot of mystery here. But something else I find interesting, we do see a lot of birds in the background. It's very subtle because they're small. And I just want to point out that with Metroid, the Chozo are like the ancient race, super important. And seeing birds could simply be like a very subtle motif of birds, the wisdom, the freedom. And it may just be as simple as that. It may just be that they like to put things off into the distance. But we haven't seen birds yet, normal birds at least, in Prime 4. We've seen like these alien creatures flying around. I don't think they're quite the same. And actually over here, we see one that's fairly up close, and I think it might not be a normal bird. This one might be like a giant bird. In fact, my first thought was maybe it's a dragon. And then I think, oh, is that Ridley? I doubt this is specifically Ridley, but it is curious to think about, especially since we are talking about this ancient structure here. I assume ancient, maybe it's not, but we have birds flying around it. The Chozo, could it be related? Possibly. But the biggest thing about this is just how vast this terrain appears in Metroid Prime 4. There is a vast desert here. We have not seen any sort of deserts depicted in the first two trailers yet. Now, in the first trailer, the area is very rocky and mountainous, so perhaps that is what this environment is, maybe. But it doesn't look the same to me. It looks very different, and I am very curious about this. Now, we've barely actually seen much of Prime 4 so far. I understand we've gone the second trailer, but from what I understand of what we're seeing, this could all be within the very first hour of the game. Both trailers. The first trailer, to me, is very clearly the opening section of the game. Very much how, like, when Samus enters the space frigate, and you can beat that in, like, 10 minutes or less if you wanted to. And then we see that Samus loses some of her abilities, her normal scan is gone, she doesn't have missiles anymore when she starts in Vuros, but as we see throughout the trailer, she obtains one energy tank, one missile expansion, which is very early on gameplay. All of this can be done within the first hour easily. And so the main point I'm making here is that we've barely seen anything of the game yet. I don't want to put a percentage, but we are talking about a very, very small fraction here, and the game may still be opening up. Think of it like this. What if the first trailer, that area where we're helping the Federation fight back against the space pirates, what if that's like the opening segment to Tears of the Kingdom? And then after those initial minutes, then there's some sort of crazy cutscene that plays out, something happens to Link, we also know something happens to Samus because she loses some of her powers but also has these now new psychic abilities, and then she shows up magically elsewhere, unexpectedly. Link shows up magically elsewhere, unexpectedly, in this giant island in the sky. And that area is also still just a beginning section. So it's possible that Vuros may also just be a beginning section as well. And ultimately what I'm getting at here is that at least this desert is a depiction of another environment. We will be able to leave Vuros. Actually, in the first trailer, where you're fighting the space pirates, we do see an energy tank, which implies you can go back to this area later on. It's not like in the first Metroid Prime game where you explore the space frigate just once and you can never go back, or at least not in that way. It changes completely later on. And so there is more to find in Prime 4, but I also gotta say, with a vast desert like this, I am gonna ask the question, is this desert itself and its openness explorable? If so, could that mean that maybe this game does have some very open environments? From what we've seen so far, everything's been fairly limited, not like tiny, but pretty much typical Metroid Prime areas. Could there be something more, like exploring this vast desert? Possibly remains to be seen. However, when thinking about this, it reminds me of some rumors that have been going on. Not too long ago, we talked about how Kiwi Talks had said on Twitter that they expect Prime 4 to be in the Switch 2 Direct, and that its unveiling would blow everything out of the water. That would be the true unveiling of the game. And while obviously there's some opinion involved there may be a debate if how much he actually knows, although he is clearly connected, so I do think he knows something at least. There's no guarantees though. What if we haven't really truly gotten the true unveiling of Prime 4 yet? We've already gotten confirmation that there are going to be Nintendo Switch 2 editions, so I still think that Prime 4 likely is going to have a Switch 2 version, and so the game may look and run better. They may show it off in the Switch 2 Direct. Not to mention, the psychic abilities, I almost feel like they added this in with the new pointer controls, the mouse controls, in mind for Switch 2, which, by the way, have recently been like triple confirmed because Nintendo released a new render that shows the mouse controls next to docked mode and portable mode. And so Nintendo could still be saving a bigger unveiling, a proper showcase for Prime 4. Maybe. But then we also have this conversation about Metroid Primes 2 and 3 because they were not in the Direct, and actually Nintendo did not announce any imminent Switch 1 releases that are being published by them. They announced 2 new games, Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life, which are coming out next year, and then they made mention of Pokemon and Prime 4, but didn't give us any updates in terms of release timing. So we still don't know much about imminent Switch 1 releases, if there are even any. But Nate the Hate a few days ago was asked on Twitter by Powder, do you think sometime we will see Metroid Prime 2 and 3? Nate responds, at this point only if they hit NSO. For Metroid Prime 2, especially. Then AF asks, feel the same about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess? And Nate responds, yes. So, Nate had actually put out a podcast a little bit before the Direct where he said he did not expect to see Metroid Prime 2, 3, or even 4 in the Direct. We did get 4 in a trailer. He was thinking we'd see it in the Switch 2 Direct. Now, the thing about this, a lot of people have been talking about what Nate has been saying, and I really think he's just speculating at this point. I don't know if I would even call this a rumor, although sometimes it has been a bit blurred. We're not entirely sure if he's saying something with informed information or if it's just what he thinks, right? But myself personally, I've actually been talking about the possibility for a few weeks already, ever since we got the FCC filing of what appears to be a GameCube controller for Switch 2, that it might be the case that of a lot of the remasters we've been waiting for, Metroid Prime 2, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, F-Zero GX, these games might just be getting saved for a GameCube Nintendo Switch Online announcement, which could even be in the Switch 2 Direct. But I'll go a step further, because people are going to be asking about Wii games, and I also mentioned this weeks ago. But given what we can do with the Switch 1 Joy-Cons, and also by extension the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, they could also have very easily Nintendo Wii come to NSO as well. So what if we get a GameCube plus Wii coming to Nintendo Switch Online at the same time, and then all of a sudden, we can get games like Prime 2 and 3, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, including the Wii version of Twilight Princess, games like Mario Galaxy 2, all of these could possibly show up. And maybe that's why we've been hearing about a lot of these games for so many years at this point and they haven't been revealed yet, because Nintendo simply decided they want to save a big announcement like this for the beginning of the Switch 2 era. Possibly. So here I am, probably a day and a half before the big Switch 2 Direct, and I still have a strong optimism that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond will show up to some capacity in the Direct. And even if it doesn't, it's fine. Everything they've shown about Prime 4 is great Metroid Prime gameplay. I think the game will still sell well, it will do great, Will it do as great as I think it can? No. But as we've been arguing, perhaps Nintendo isn't holding back on truly showcasing Prime 4 for the Switch 2 reveal. We shall see. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.